7:01. I will call the Common Council meeting for this evening to order. We have roll call, please.
Certainly. Mr. Schrader.
Here.
Mrs. Schatzinger.
Here.
Mr. Hanson.
Here.
Mr. Gallops.
Here.
Mr. Morrison.
Here.
Mrs. Kane. Mr. Wirch.
Here.
Mr. Split.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the many blessings you have bestowed upon this community and its citizens. Father, we ask that in these times of uncertainty that we're able to look to you, and that uncertainty through you will lead us to certain things moving forward in our lives. We pray for those that are in need, those that may have health concerns. We pray for everyone in our community, in our county, in our state, and in our nation, Father. We ask that you be with us tonight as we go through our deliberations, that we may do so in a manner that is pleasing to you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Make a motion, we approve the agenda.
Second. Been moved by David, seconded by John. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of approving the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Now time for public comment. We have a few people that want to speak this evening. This is an opportunity for citizens to come before the council with comments and concerns on any current city issue, knowing that no action will be taken tonight. All that I ask is that you keep a civil and respectful and within 5 minutes. However, discussion of personnel or of individual members of the Common Council shall not be considered appropriate. I would also expect council to treat the citizens with the same respect. When I call your name, please step forward to the lectern here and state your name and address before you start your discussion. First person is Jeff Blackburn.
My name's Jeff Blackburn. I live at 553 Hall Street, Ripon. I'm just here to bring up anything new, or if anybody has any questions about the ATV routes and the city limits. Pretty much went over everything in the last meeting. I do have some books that I've received that Ben has a copy. I received these. They're actually from the Kettle Moraine area, from the ATV clubs around that area. That this is their pamphlet that they use to acquire routes. So if anybody wants a copy, just let me know. Explains everything word for word. Last night was the Town of Ripon meeting. That's going to get brought back up again next month. They're waiting for phone calls and emails to get back and get any information that they've been looking for. But in the meantime, since the last time we met here, I believe was 2 months ago, some of the surrounding areas that are different than Ripon, but I'm just putting it out that some of the other areas that have gotten on board. Town of Oakfield is passed. Nikiamai Township and Neepiescom Township are marked and open. That connects El Dorado and the Friendship Township. Town of Rosendale's meeting was last night. I asked them about it, and they wanted information as soon as possible so their board members could talk about it. So they have their information. Town of Rushford is open. The town of Waupun is open. And then also the city of Waupun has been open. And Utica had their meeting last night and they passed. So they're in the process to start writing an agenda, writing an ordinance. And the town of Matoman also passed a couple weeks ago. So at this point, everything to the south of us is open, will be open with the town of Matoman. And I don't know where the town of Ripon is really gonna sit on it. I mean, they're interested in us coming and talking about it, but with this COVID, it's impossible to get people to come. I live in the city, so what I say doesn't have that much value because there's nobody else there. But somebody's got to start. The more people get driving around, I believe, and seeing the signs around the community, people are gonna ask about it because there's people that have ATVs that have no idea that there's routes. So I just know from the standpoint with some of the business owners I talked to in town, downtown, and at the retail end of town, on the west end of town, they think it would help their business. Like the downtown people think that the ATV traffic would get people to venture the long way through town to travel on a mini vacation or something versus traveling with a car. Like last night, I used the example, traveling from like Oshkosh to Juneau. You don't drive through downtown Ripon to get there. You go around Ripon and take the highway. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for exposure for businesses that people don't even know exist in the town. So with that, in the city, we don't have any streets over 35 miles an hour, so that really isn't nothing to discuss. But one thing that I would like myself to see is for the minimum age limit to be 16 and have a valid driver's license in order to operate. So with that, you're gonna have people that are gonna probably break the law and ride that are young, but their parents are gonna find out, and it's a pretty hefty fine. So, I mean, it's kind of will take care of itself. And like the fellow said that come last time, you know, it's gonna be busy at first. If you would open the routes in the middle of June, they're probably gonna be super busy versus opening them now and having the people that really wanna ride get out and do it now, and then come springtime when it's nice, you don't have everybody out at one time. So I would just mainly like to see the 16-year-old age limit, just for safety.
And that's your 5 minutes.
That's it too.
All right, thank you.
Do you want to get those? Right?
Anybody would like a copy that's super informative, it explains all the laws, fines, statistics. And that goes back.
Just leave them with Lori. She can distribute.
Yeah. I will bring up to
All right, thank
I
you.
apologize, though, I didn't have time to get it converted over to the city of Ripon, but the formats for the township, it's all the same besides the map.
All right, thank you. All right, next I will call on Marcy Culver.
Hi there, my name is Marcy Culver. My address is W4749 State Road, 2373, Princeton, Wisconsin. So I'm here because I own Marcy's Pet Spa in Ripon. I've been here for about 4 years, a little over 4 years, and I've grown. And I am asking for permission to do some overnight stay for dogs. So I have a grooming salon right now, and I have a grooming academy. And we have training, cat grooming, dog grooming, everything that we need for this area, but we do need some overnight stay for dogs. A lot of my clients come to my house in the city in Princeton, and we do some boarding there, but we just need a safe place for them to be able to stay. So I've sent you all my information from my other 2 locations. I have 3 locations. So I've been doing this for about 15 years, and I have 2 really successful boarding facilities up in, one in West Salem and one in Sparta. They're about 10,000 square feet. I have about 40 employees, and we do a lot of overnight boarding. So I just feel like it's really needed for my Ripon clients to have a place to put their dogs for a safe stay. So as you can tell on the papers, we do rooms. We don't do kennels. So we do I think they're like a 4x4 inch or 4x4 foot room. Some of them are 5x5. Katie can give you more information on that. But and they're just a room for them to stay in with like a noise barrier, and basically they have just a nice, easy place to stay. So we don't do kenneling, so that's just something that I've never wanted to do or never believed in, because I wouldn't want my dogs to be in a kennel. So that's what we've done, and I've done that for about 13 years in West Salem. I have 35 rooms up there, soundproof, beautiful rooms, as you can tell. So that's what I'm asking to do. And the building that I'm looking to purchase, I gave you the information on, is the old New Image building in town on 23. And it's perfect for what I'm wanting to do, because I want to do like a doggy hotel, Airbnb, very, very nice rooms, very soundproof, and just like an extension of my business, and only really for my clients. So usually all my boarding clients have to be a client of mine from a nail trim or something, so we kind of compact the business. So that's kind of what I'm asking to do. That building is perfect for me. I would keep both locations for now, and eventually down the road, probably just have the one, but I would keep them both. And right now I have grooming, I have I have a grooming academy training, and I just think that this is something that Ripon could use. And and I plan to make, if you can see the rooms, very soundproof, very safe. And we don't plan on doing a daycare ever, but what we do is we have a little room set aside for our boarding dogs, so they go in their suites at night, and they go in the little room during the day. So there's very little barking. My West Salem location, we're in a residential business area, but we're in a business area, but our whole area is residential, so we're around houses, and we have had no complaints. So we take the dogs out of the boarding suites at about 6:30 in the morning, then they're in a little play area through the day, and then we put them back in about 8:30 at night. So they don't stay in their suites all day. They're very tired. They sleep good. So I just really am hoping that Ripon will allow me to do this, because I think it'll be a really good extension for the area. So we only want to do 10 rooms in the basement of this building for this. So yeah, and I think I sent you guys all my information. So I will, if this works out and it's approved, I will put an offer on the building and go forward. And our outdoor area will be about 15 to 20. It's not a big area, just for the boarding dogs to go out during the day. But it will be a vinyl fence or a wood fence, and it'll be a small area. So we do a lot of, our boarding dogs will get walks, because we will only have 10 of them. So it's pretty basic and simple. I've been doing this a long time. I haven't had any issues. My other location is in Sparta by Fort McCoy. We have 35 boarding suites in both of those locations. So this one will be a smaller level, and I think it'll be a really great addition to my business and what this area needs, and I'm really hoping that Ripon will see it as like an Airbnb or a doggy hotel type environment. So it's a very minimal boarding suites, and I'm hoping that we can just ease the pain for this area, because there's nowhere to take your dogs for an overnight stay that people feel comfortable with. So that's what I'm asking for.
All right. If you stick around, the
Yep.
council members might have some questions for you when we
Absolutely.
get to that discussion item.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Katie Henriksen?
Hi, I'm Katie Henriksen, West Salem, W4183 Teresa Drive. I just kind of wanted to back up what Marcy said. So I run our West Salem location. So that's our really main, busiest location. And I don't know if you guys have any questions about how we do our overnight pet stays there, but she kind of hit on all the main points. It's a 5x5 square foot room, a suite we call it. So I take people on tours a lot through there, and I'm always impressed by people are so happy that they get to see the room their dog stays in, and it's not a kennel. Generally, we've had a lot of good success with our pet stays at West Salem. So I'm here maybe later if people have more questions about that. I'd love to answer them.
Thank you. All right, that is all I have for public comment. So next order of business is to accept the,
I have a comment. I think it would be incredibly remiss if the council did not commend Ann and her election crew for the wonderful job that they did with the national election, local, state. But record turnout, talked with many people. They said the process was well done, was quick, was safe, well run. And I think they deserve a commendation for all of their efforts.
thank you, Al. All right, now we'll move on to accepting the reports from standing committees and staff. Is there a motion to do that?
I want to make a motion to pull item number 7, the report of the senior center. Or, I don't know if I need to make a motion.
So is that a motion to approve everything with the exception of item number 7?
That is correct.
Second.
Has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the committee reports except for item number 7, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those are approved. And Jolene?
The reason why I pulled that is that I just wanted to take a moment to highlight to the public that our director of the senior center, Noreen, did ask us for help to spread the word that there are meals available to all Fond du Lac County residents 60 and older, or having a spouse who's 60 or older, and that that the meals are available Monday through Friday, except for holidays, for a $3 suggested donation. And especially during this time of challenging times, I wanted to just make sure that our folks all throughout the county know that they can contact the senior center and get a warm meal. And so this is why I pulled that item. And so at this point, I move to approve item number 7, the report from the Senior Citizens Center.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Moved by Jolene, seconded by David. Any discussion? Jim?
The senior center will not be delivering those meals, and they are not coordinating those meals, correct? They have to get a friend or relative to go pick up those meals? With the COVID situation, I do not believe with the Fond du Lac County that we can be delivering those, correct?
So I do
Just so people are aware, we're not delivering, that we will help them arrange getting a meal?
yes, so here it says the direct language, which is also available, I believe, on our website. When we submit this, the reports, correct. All reports are available on the website under the minutes of the meeting. Lori, are you shaking your head? Yes, that this will be up in the minutes?
The minutes are, the whole agenda packet is on the website.
Yep.
Everything you have before you.
Yep. So thank you, Mr. Wirtz, for saying that. So a friend, neighbor, or relative may pick up the meal and bring to the recipient if the recipient is unable to get the meal. So that's a very good point. And the meals are take home and eat. You do not come to the senior center to eat them. Yes.
Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor of approving item number 7, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's approved. Tonight on the consent calendar, we just have the minutes from several meetings. Is there a motion to approve that?
Motion to approve it.
Second.
Moved by Ben, seconded by John. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the consent calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is approved. Moving on to discussion items. First item is the pet boarding. Anyone like to start the discussion, or we kind of got a synopsis already.
What is?
What is going on?
Yeah, what is the deal with this whole thing?
Lori
Okay.
or Lud, do you want to start this?
I will. Lori and I have had some discussions with Marcy, and Marcy and I have had some discussions over the last couple of weeks regarding this concept, and she presented it very well to the body in the sense that she has an existing business, but the business that she has does not allow for kenneling or boarding. Those are the words in our current ordinance, and kenneling or boarding can only take place in a zone of agricultural. There is no other kennel or boarding of animals anywhere else in the city. So what she's indicating is she's located a property in a particular zone, and I think is that B2, Lori?
Yes.
B2 zone that may be perfect for her needs if it were to be permitted. It is not permitted. So this evening, what she is seeking from the Common Council is direction that this matter be referred to the Plan Commission to amend the ordinance to reflect that there is another type of activity other than kenneling or boarding. And Lori and I went back and forth in terms of trying to come up with a name. And I think this evening, Pet Hotel may be as good as any. Quite frankly, Pet Spas doesn't suggest overnight, Pet Hotel does. So maybe it's a pet hotel that we would consider as a city in certain zones with restrictions on conditional use granting within that zone. Right now, there is no way that she can do this. There is no way that this would be permitted at that location. She'd have to find an agricultural location under the current written words of our ordinance. So that is what she is seeking, and essentially it's a motion from this body if they have any interest, and I think she did a good job of presenting it, and there's someone here to answer other questions, is to move it to the Plan Commission to study whether or not pet hotels at certain locations in the city would be a new use of property in certain zones with certain restrictions.
And for the sake of additional discussion, I'll make a motion to move this to the Planning Commission for consideration.
I'll second it.
Second.
Moved by Al, seconded by
Give it to John.
John. Any further discussion on this topic tonight? Jim.
And then it will come back to us for final
Absolutely.
approval of the ordinance. So it will come back
Absolutely.
to council again. Right.
Absolutely. The Plan Commission is going to take a look at it. It seemed like a reasonable offer. Certainly, other communities have done this. It, to me, seems to be different than kenneling and boarding, and so it is something to at least look at as a community, and where that may be appropriately situated in our community. And again, keeping the string of conditional use available if it were to be granted in a given situation.
The only other comment would be with the Plan Commission to look at possibly with our present-day pet ordinance as far as the community with needing approval of surrounding areas or something like that. Not sure if it's pertinent or not, but it may be something to look at, because then if we change this one, then we're changing another one in a residential area instead of a B2.
Right, that's
you know.
why I think the definition is so important.
Correct.
So I think the definition defining a pet hotel as opposed to liberalizing kenneling, I think is really the key to it, and I think Marcy did a good job of laying out that it's different.
And the definition of what that means in a state.
Exactly, exactly.
Thank you.
Elaine?
So I know that the purpose of our council is to make sure when anything new is brought forth, that we make sure all of our i's are dotted, t's are crossed. But I'm conscious that the person that brought forward this change, Marcy, who's here tonight, is looking at needing to put in a bid to even have this project be considered for her. I don't know how timely that is, but I'm conscious that bringing this to Plan Commission and then coming back here, what is the estimated time frame that this process will be before it could be approved officially?
Yeah, it's as quickly as the Plan Commission can move on it, and
You can make an offer contingent on the approval.
She absolutely can.
So I think that she can do that if she gets a sense that this council might be positive to it. I think that, I don't know what type of indication we might.
It's the motion that
motion.
Shell has made would be assigned to her, that at least it's moving forward. And I think the strength of her argument lies in the details, and I think you saw that she's done her homework. So, nobody can guarantee it.
Right.
Nobody can guarantee it, and you're not making those kind of motions on a zoning question. I appreciate what you're saying, but it's amending a zoning ordinance that has to take place. There is no other way around this. We can't suddenly stand up and say, oh, never mind our ordinance.
And I'm not asking for that, to be clear.
No, I understand. I just want to make it clear to the listening public and to the potential applicant that if Lori and I could find another way to bring it to the common council, we probably would have. There is only one way, and that's to amend the law, and there's a process for that, and that's the motion that's been made this evening.
John?
Yes, I'd just like to say, I've personally been at Marcy's West Salem location. It's top-notch, it's clean, they have good workers. The customers feel safe dropping off their pets. So I would say it would be a good fit in Ripon if we can make it work legally in that location. You just looking to make an exception for this one case, or are we changing the law completely?
We're changing the law, and that's why I preface my comments,
Okay.
that I think you want to distinguish it from boarding and kenneling. And so Lori and I have kind of kicked it back and forth, and Marcy was aware of my concerns, and I think as good as anything is pet hotel. And I think John's comments kind of tied back into that. So the Plan Commission's got to wrestle with definition.
Okay. You're
But
just going to
that's
get the definition and then make where a B2 can be a
conditional
dog
use.
hotel.
Yep.
Okay.
Pet hotel, conditional use in B2 zoning is probably as expansive as we would get. I don't think anybody here is looking to stick it in a residential area or anything like a residential area. But B2 has many types of uses
Right.
that one could
Okay.
argue are sometimes noisy, sometimes busy, sometimes whatever other objections you might have to it.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of moving this item to be referred to the Plan Commission, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that will be taken up by the Plan Commission.
Mayor, so Marcy, you understand what's going on? You understand the next steps going to the Plan Commission?
think so, yeah, we'll come back here.
So Lori will be in touch with you and let you know in the Plan Commission when it'll be on the agenda, so you guys can be part of that.
I'm sorry, what was it?
Lori will get in touch with you guys when it's going to be on the Plan Commission, so then you can be part of that.
Yeah, and I know Lynn just said, my realtor, like, if I could, I know you can't give me a time frame, but I'm probably gonna put an offer on the building just contingent with this, because I don't want someone else to get it. But I haven't seen much interest in the building, but, there is no way to give any type of time frame. Is that correct?
Well, Plan Commission meets next week, so we can get it on their agenda. And
Yeah, thank you, yeah, that makes sense, thank you.
All right. Moving on to the next item, the amendment to the chronic nuisance premises ordinance. Chief?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. As the council knows, we had some discussions throughout the summer and early fall here about code enforcement and issues involving that throughout the city. We've had discussions at length really about that topic. So if you recall, the last time that we kind of raised that topic, one of the things that we decided to do was myself, along with city attorney, city administrator, director of public works, got together to kind of figure out where we were going, what we needed to do, what we needed to address in order to move forward with some code enforcement concerns that we were seeing. Basically, the discussion that we had between that group of people really validated the need that we needed to have those three entities that are currently involved in code enforcement, the police department, public works, and building inspector code enforcement, continue to be involved in those things. However, we recognize that there needs to be some adjustments made in the process to run smoother, create more accountability, and enforcement response. So some of the changes that we're moving forward with as we tackle this issue is the police department will now transition, will handle all those things that we have been handling, but we'll go towards enforcing the tall grass, noxious weeds, any trash, garbage type complaints. Take those away from the code enforcement building inspector. Department of Public Works will continue to handle any complaints involving snow removal, trees, any of those type of code issues that they normally would work with in their normal process anyways. And then code enforcement will handle pretty much building issues, signage, structure type complaints that we have. But the important function now is that what we're proposing is more of a team approach, so that when we get a problem property, that instead of the police department going one day and addressing an issue, and then the next day code enforcement goes and addresses another issue, and the following day DPW goes and addresses the other issue, the police department basically will coordinate a response by all those entities together. So we go to that property, a problem property, and we address all of those issues at one time. What we believe that will do will offer more of an ability to communicate on these issues between the departments on enforcement issues, document those issues properly, follow up with appropriate enforcement action that should be needed. Okay? The ordinance that you're looking at tonight is really the first step in doing that. Some of the other things, entities that we would incorporate into that team approach would be things like the fire department, for example. So if we have a problem property that is not, maybe they're mandated to have fire alarms or working smoke detectors or elevator issues, and they're not doing that, they would be part of that response team as well, okay? So this code, or the amendments to the ordinance that you're looking at, really is the first step in developing that plan, because we need to address a couple things there. If you look at the enforcement, or at the ordinance that's in your packet, a couple things we did right away. Just remember, on the chronic nuisance property, these are incidents that you see a list of incidents there that are 3 times on separate days in a 6-month period can get your property into that chronic nuisance property issue. However, the change here, there's an exception to that. Typically in the past, it was 1 violation involving 961 violations. So for example, if we served a search warrant on a property for manufacture, delivery of controlled substances, on a drug search warrant, for example, that automatically kicked that property into a chronic nuisance property. It's a one-time offense, okay, versus having to do that 3 times in order to get them there. So what we did then is we modified that exception paragraph a little bit to include the whole chapter 961, which is the drug chapter, the chapter 944, which is crimes of sexual immorality. So these are issues like prostitution, lewd and lascivious behavior, issues like that were kind of individually identified in the old ordinance. That's what we're looking to group those together, because personally I felt that, if you've got somebody violating that crime, we shouldn't have to wait for 3 times violations in order to kick that in. Same thing with the 948-12, possession of child pornography. We shouldn't have to wait for 3 times for that to occur in order to kick that into the chronic nuisance property. That happens 1 time at a property, it gets kicked into that chronic nuisance property, okay? The other issues that we addressed in the ordinance were adding towards like the bottom, number 15 and 16, violations of fire code and violations of building code. So if we've got a property that's dilapidated, that's having issues, and the code enforcement officer, the building inspector, is identifying those issues, if they continue to have issues, or if the fire department addresses issues there and they continue to have issues and don't fix it, they can potentially kick that location into this chronic nuisance property as part of that team approach. Again, 3 or more violations within a 6-month period. The rest of the ordinance is pretty much the same. We're working internally within the police department to address some additional enforcement issues. We're modifying our school resource officer, community liaison position that we're creating for the summertime to address a lot of the code enforcement issues as well. So we're working on that internally as well. But this is really the first step. The approval of this ordinance is the first step towards addressing those chronic code enforcement issues that we've been dealing with for some time. Questions on that?
Are you looking for approval of the ordinance tonight, Bill?
Yes. I believe that's what we're
Yes,
looking for, yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
How, can you remind me, when someone has one of these violations, is this available for the public to see? How might someone know how many violations someone has? Is that public knowledge?
What they could, I suppose, do is file an open records request.
Okay.
So, I'm not sure where you're going or what you're asking there, but potentially, let's say you have a renter that's looking to rent a property. They could potentially come down and file an open records request asking for complaints at that location for a time period,
Okay.
past 6 months, past year, whatever.
Okay.
Is that?
Yeah, I was just curious to
That
know
would
what
be,
it, yeah.
that would probably be because if they're issued a citation now with the municipal court, that doesn't even go on CCAP or anything like that, so it would have to be an open records request to get that. Obviously, there'd be a record, we'd have a record,
And it would be subject to whether it's pending
yes,
prosecution. You would not see it until it's concluded.
correct.
It isn't like we're depriving anybody of due process. The open records request would not allow them to see it until a conclusion has been reached.
Yeah, and there's obviously the open records laws would apply to that as far as information that's released.
Can you also remind me, so I do think it's strange that we are spending our police enforcement time, which is so valuable, on tall grass and noxious weeds. And I know that there are some folks that, I think there's a difference between someone not caring about their property and someone choosing to have a well-groomed yard that has taller grass for ethical reasons for the environment. I know that currently, right now, we don't have anything in place to allow those folks to be designated. I don't know if that plays into here now. It's just something that I do want to state, because I'm conscious that there have been a number of people from the city in the past that have stated that they're frustrated that there are not exceptions. And I also feel that there's probably, I assume, frustration that the police, that your time is spent on something like this. But do the police already respond to tall grass and noxious weeds? So we're not, if we approve this, we're not saying you now handle more, are we?
No,
Right,
You're not approving anything other than the ordinance this evening.
okay, yeah,
the ordinance changes.
Bill was just laying out how the administration looks to go forward.
Got it.
With enforcing ordinances that we have in the books, using all the resources available, and he mentioned that the police department might be able to use some personnel that they have to assist in it. The biggest complaint that we see in the city is citizens seeing things that they see every day, and they're saying, why is that still there when it was there last week, and then it was there last month? And so we recognize that in the nuisance world, and so we're trying to remedy it by putting as many resources together as we can.
And typically, those complaints, people don't know who to call. So they call the police department. So that's why it's important, this team concept is important for that, because we document those complaints within our internal computer-aided dispatch system. We're able to then forward those complaints maybe to DPW to address the tall grass issues where they issue the notice. We're just kind of taking that back and dealing with that, yeah.
thanks.
Move approval of the ordinance.
I'll second that.
Moved by Al, and seconded by Jolene. Any discussion? Jim?
Two questions. Number 9 talks about trespassing. How would that be against the owner or the premises versus somebody on their property? So are you going to then call that a nuisance property because there is a trespassing complaint on their property?
No,
Am I
no,
not hearing it right, Bill? Sorry.
Yeah, so there's an exception incorporated in here that if the owner of the establishment or the owner of the property is the one making the complaint,
Reports it, correct.
that doesn't count as a nuisance, that doesn't count as a violation, one of the three. So what we don't want to have is, for let's say a landlord reporting that they're having problems with a tenant, we want them to call so we can help them solve that problem. So we don't penalize that landlord or that owner for making those calls. But now if the neighbor's calling, saying, hey, there's loud noise over there every day, do something about it, now that becomes an issue. But if the landlord himself or the owner of the property is calling us for those issues, that's not a violation.
Section C.
Right.
Who also?
Is that what,
the
does
change-
that answer
the-
your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
The change in ownership as well, obviously if the property changes ownership, does that then property get reset to zeros across the board?
Probably. Yep, because we would have to provide notice as part of that.
Again, I think Jolene's point, if I bought the property, how would I know that I don't have any strikes, in a sense? Because I could
Yep,
get a noise
yeah.
complaint just because I was playing my music in the garage too loud.
Right, we would give them notice. And quite frankly, the chronic nuisance properties that we're dealing with aren't those,
Properties.
yeah, they're major. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I sent a letter this week to a property owner that we've been to that property 13 times since September 1st.
Weekly, yeah.
So that's a chronic property. That's a problem that needs to be addressed. So, yeah, that's an example.
Further questions or discussion? One more time, any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote on this. Lori?
Mr. Schrader.
Aye.
Mrs. Schatzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Hanson.
Aye.
Mr. Gallops.
Aye.
Mr. Morrison.
Aye.
Mr. Wirch.
Aye.
Mr. Split.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Good, thank you. All right, next item up is the dispatch center. Chief, back to you.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, I hope that you had an opportunity to review a stack of documents that were supplied to you within your packet on this topic. If you remember, we had discussions back in August on this topic, and at that time, you had asked for some additional information, and that's really the purpose of getting this forward to you tonight about some of that additional information that you had requested and inquired about. So really, after the discussion in August, two available options for your consideration and for more information for you on retaining dispatch services here within the city of Ripon, as we currently are, and secondly, moving communications possibly towards the Fond du Lac County Communications Center. Let's talk about the first one, the first issue first, and I'm just kind of not going to go through the documents that you were supplied to word by word or line by line, but I'm just going to kind of give you a synopsis of that information. Option number one, retaining the dispatch services. We had asked about, or you had asked about some transition needs, costs, some of those issues. Obviously, with retaining the dispatch service here, that would be very limited in terms of transition needs if that occurs. Control of the dispatch center would remain with the police department, with the chief of police, as we operate currently. Some of the things that would need to occur that are outlined in your packet, some of the highlights. We would continue with a $25,000 budgeted expenditure for the radio room reconfiguration. If you remember, we had some discussions about that. That was budgeted for in 2020, but we've put that on hold based on this conversation. And obviously, if retention is what we desire, then that project, those funds would need to be carried over to 2021, and we would take care of that project then. Replacement of a radio repeater, budgeted about $5,000. That needs to be done. A repeater, basically, so you understand, is a is a way to boost radio transmission. So the transmission goes maybe from the dispatch center to the repeater, and then it goes out from there, so it's a higher boost for that communication, just so you understand what that is. Replacement of the backup fire department computer system. We have a backup paging system that is at the fire department. That's operating on a Windows 7, I believe, computer right now. So that system would have to be replaced and then reprogrammed. Costs about $14,000 there. Replace of the 911 phone system hardware. Obviously, we had some major discussions about that. That is an antiquated system that needs to be replaced. It has to be replaced. Possibly we could cross our fingers and get through another year, but that's going to have to be something that needs to be addressed either with a budget issue or borrowing or something, some type of plan there to replace that system. Dispatch computers, we estimate because of their, remember, in the fall of 21, we're looking at Fond du Lac County is going to be changing CAD, computer-aided dispatch, as well as record management system. So you're looking at, we're going to have to upgrade some computers within our dispatch center. So that's part of that. All of those things would be transition needs if we're not transitioning, if you will, okay? And we can accomplish quite a few of those things. I understand, based on the budget passing tonight, there's $20,000 in the EMS budget to replace computers. That would cover the dispatch computers as well as the fire department computer. And again, the 911 system, obviously, probably on hold until 2022. Hopefully, it gets us through there. That's a day-to-day system. Otherwise, we're going to need to borrow for that or figure out something there. I just don't know what the solution is. One of the things I would suggest is if we decide to retain dispatch center here, I think we need to establish some type of replacement fund so that we're not in this situation again as far as hardware. If we choose not to go to Fond du Lac County, I think that would be imperative. We need to probably think about setting some money aside for understanding that the commitment would be for the long term with that center. Costs associated with that retention are outlined on page 3 of your packet that I gave you. Council has been very supportive in the past of dispatch, and certainly we appreciate that. This information provides you with that information that you need to see what that looks like going forward and what the future looks like if retention is what's desired here. Okay? As far as the second option, transfer to Fond du Lac County Dispatch, based on the August meeting, there was some questions and things that you would like clarified. So hopefully we were able to do that with the information that was provided to you. If that occurs, if that's the desire, what we would recommend, or what I would recommend, is a phase-in process. And what does that look like? Well, that basically looks like in doing a phase-in process, we would, the 3 major components here, police, fire, and EMS. The fire department has the least needs if transfer does occur. So they basically have radio issues, reprogramming, those type of issues. They would probably be the first in that phase-in to go. So we would suggest March of 2021 if that is what we decide we want to do. EMS, we would phase in as the second portion of that phase in and look for a target date of July of next year, 2021. Obviously, Chief Teachout can explain to you the necessities if you decide to go that route, including his future needs and any operational issues that he sees and any cost projections or concerns that he has with that. The police department, we would then shoot for a switch over by September 1st of 2021. Obviously, there's a multitude of issues that need to be addressed before that time, which are outlined for you in the packet that I included. What I would suggest is if we do that, is I would suggest that $25,000 that we talked about for the radio room reconfiguration, that's going to need to be carried over. I would suggest that we take that 25,000 with the additional 20,000 that EMS has put in their budget, put that in a separate account and allow police and fire to utilize that, or police and EMS to utilize that for those transition needs. So whatever expenses come up, we can utilize from those monies that are there. Obviously, the other issues then cost to the city for that transfer to Fond du Lac County Dispatch. Fond du Lac County, you see a letter in there from the Fond du Lac County Executive. The cost on the levy by Fond du Lac County would be $200,000 per year, and that would be in perpetuity, so that would be forever, or at least until that county exec is there, but that's the agreement that is in place or that he's offered. So one of the other issues that you asked about was whether the communications officers would be taken care of if a transfer is done. One of the proposal things that I placed into that, included under the police department transfer, would be that health insurance would continue through 2021 or until through the year of 2021 for those communications officers, or until they get employment, which offers them health insurance, whichever happens first. So either the end of the year or they get other health insurance. They're obviously eligible for payout on some of the liabilities that you see for the employees that I've included in the packet, so you see what those numbers are. They're also eligible for hire at Fond du Lac County. They would need to apply for those positions and go through that process, and Fond du Lac County would make that decision on hiring those employees. So that's kind of a synopsis of the information that was included on the second portion of that, or the second option for you to consider. Really, in conclusion, before I turn it over to Chief Teachout and Chief Saul for any additional comments, I just want to, repeat to you the goals kind of and why we started talking about this in the beginning. Really was to educate educate the members of the council on the operations of the communications center. What do they do? What happens and what's their function here? Explain the vital role that communication plays for our emergency responders within the city, and understand that. Obviously, with several new councilmen, it was important, and councilwomen, it was important for you to understand the critical role that they play. Provide you with an overview of the critical infrastructure needs. Shall we continue with dispatching here in the city, and the cost of the continuation if that's the route that you choose to go. Obviously, there's a lot of things to consider here. And then finally, to give you a cost option for an alternative operations if we decided that Fond du Lac County Communications was something we were interested in. Obviously, there's a lot of talk in this document about money. It's just important to remember that it's not just about the money in this picture. Obviously, that is important for the city and a big financial picture of the city going forward. But the safety and the needs of the community should be the forefront of this consideration. Okay. I believe whichever decision we make and whichever decision we resolve to, that the safety of the community will not be compromised. If I believe that, certainly I would not have given you the information that you've been given. Fond du Lac County does provide excellent service for police, fire, and EMS for the remainder of the county, but I want to reiterate of the professional and great service that our communications officers do for our community as well. So that's important to understand. If you consider the information, what information and needs that Chief Teachout is about to supply you with, he makes change financially difficult to argue for. He needs to be able to articulate those needs for his service, and that's his arena, and I'm not going to address that. Certainly he will cover those issues. Again, council's been very supportive in continuation of communication services here, and for a variety of reasons that we outlined in August as to why we retained our dispatch center here when others didn't. Okay. You must understand, finally, that there's a cost for that continued service and an increased cost for that service. I hope that you've got the knowledge as to why those costs will be there in the future. I hope you're now much more educated about the communications center than when we began this discussion several months ago. And I just, however, any desire that you have or need that you think is there to separate and go to Fond du Lac County should be given deep consideration now because of the changes that are occurring within the county and the county-based communications model. I've tried to be as open and honest with you as possible and as neutral as possible in this discussion. So that's what I have for you, and I can let Chief Teachout come and address you next, and then certainly we can address questions after that or now or whatever you want to do.
I think John has a question for you.
John?
Yes, I do. I don't know which way this is going to go, but if the dispatch center leaves Ripon and goes to Fond du Lac, do you have figures on what a communication officer makes in Fond du Lac County
Yes.
compared to Ripon?
Yes.
And benefits, is it comparable or?
Sure. As far as wages, a Fond du Lac County communications officer starting wage is about $22.18 an hour. In Ripon, it's $17.41. Their top wage in Fond du Lac County, after 6 years, they max out. Their top wage is $26.47 an hour. And our top wage tops out in 15 years, and our top wage is $22.33. So there's a $4 difference in wages on their top wage, and they top out almost 10 years sooner than we do as far as wages. And that's, the wage issue it is what it is for the city employees. The insurance rates, I've got them. It's kind of hard to understand what they are because they have several different plans. I'll just pick one. They have a blue plan, a family blue plan. The employee share, it says is $368.50. I don't know if that's for the year or what at 18%. The family share bronze is $307.09 at 15%, and the family silver, gold, platinum is 12% at $245.67, I think, a year. They're pretty comparable, I think. Single deductibles $1,000, families $2,000. So there's other things here, but that kind of gives you an idea where they're at. Is that kind of, yeah?
Yep, that's good, thank you.
I'll let Chief Teachout step up and address you, and then certainly I can come back and answer any other questions, okay?
Chief Wallner. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm John Teachout, EMS Chief for the City of Ripon. And thanks, Bill. You've done a wonderful job presenting a lot of the information. That's fortunate for me because I can keep my comments a lot shorter than you did. You've all probably received my memo about the timeline and the transition to Fond du Lac County. I've given this some serious consideration and have met with Bobby personally about some of the things that our department does that is different than what the Fond du Lac County Communications Center is used to. And my major hang-up and the major reason why I oppose moving out of our dispatch centers, we are losing the customization that we have for paging our individual people. Bobby offered me 2 separate page tones, one for a first ambulance out, one for a second ambulance out. And you've got my memo. On the back of the memo is a random weekly schedule that was out, I think, last week. And it's even hard for our dispatchers to figure out who's up next to be out on a call. And when I explained to Bobby kind of how that works, she nixed it, and I don't blame her. She's dispatching with us, I believe it'll be 42 different agencies for Fond du Lac County. We dispatch for 3. And when you're dispatched for 42 different agencies in the county, you have to do things with more regularity than what we do. That's what makes our dispatch center so special to us, is we have communications officers that can look at the schedule and know who's up and who's available for call. They can look at that schedule and know that if a hospital calls for a transfer, that we're available to do that transfer. They can look at that schedule and know that if an outlying area calls for a mutual aid or a transfer, that we would be available to do that transfer and simply say no if we can't. So that's something very special that our communications officers can do. I think that's very important. I've been working with that schedule. Call me a dinosaur, but 36 years. And it's worked out very well, served us very well. And after discussing most of this information with my staff, very few, well, let's face it, none, have told me that they would support moving away from the way our schedule is now. That's just the schedule. One of the things that I've also thrown in here for consideration is we do a number of interfacility transfers from out of area, and there would be some loss of revenue if we couldn't do those. And I did talk to Bobby about how would their dispatch center handle a request from Aurora Hospital in Oshkosh calling us saying, hey, we have a transfer, can you do it? And her comment was, well, other services in the county do that, but they're full-time services, so they just call up whoever's on call for that service and they make a decision. Well, that's great, but we're not full-time service. I have 28 staff members. 26 of those 28 staff members are full-time employees or Ripon College students. They work a full-time job in addition to volunteering and giving me hours every week to be on the schedule. They are not interested in a 12 or 14 or 16-hour shift to sit down here and wait for a phone call. They are not interested in trying to figure out who's up, who we should call, who's in that next ambulance out. And I don't blame them. I'm not interested in it either. I work 40 hours a week, well, a little bit more than 40. So that's a problem for me. We could go to a full-time service. I put some numbers in there about what that would look like. We are the only volunteer ambulance service in Fond du Lac County, volunteer paramedic ambulance service in Fond du Lac County. If we went to a full-time service, my cost would be just about equal to what we're paying our communication centers dispatchers right now. So I don't see a whole lot of savings in that particular option. Not to mention, I doubt that I could find the staff members that would want to do that. The purchase of pagers, transferring telephone lines, reprogramming radios, those are all items that I could easily absorb in my budget. When Bill spoke about me budgeting $20,000 into my budget for computer equipment replacement, that I consider that an ongoing process. I think my budget can support that. And if it's not used in a year, certainly we can carry those numbers over, just like I carry numbers, $60,000 every year over for a new ambulance. And after 4 years, we have enough to pay for a new ambulance. So those items, or that $20,000, I think wouldn't be a problem at all for us to put into our budget. Even if something were to happen upstairs, a repeater goes out again, a $5,000 expenditure, depending upon where we are in the year, depending upon my call volume, depending upon my revenues. I think we could absorb that in the EMS budget, and we wouldn't have to look to another department to try to fund that. So Bill talked about he won't compromise safety for the community. I think that going to Fond du Lac County will compromise the safety of the efficiency of the paging system that we have and the efficiency of the scheduling system that we use. And when Fond du Lac County pages an ambulance, they won't know who's on call. If nobody shows up in 6 minutes, they're just going to page mutual aid. And so now you're going to have an ambulance coming from Waupun or North Fond du Lac or Oshkosh, and that's going to delay your response time too. So long and short, I adamantly oppose losing our dispatch center. I really do. I do not think that it's going to be beneficial for my department. And I'm willing to take any questions.
Thank you so much for presenting this. And I have great respect for you. And because of my respect for you, and because of the letter that you submitted, which, and in your strong statement right now, saying that if we move to changing our communications center, that's going to affect you negatively. And so when I hear that from you, it is my duty and responsibility to take that seriously. Also because we're talking about the lives of our friends and family here. So I met with, and I don't know if I want to ask, perhaps it's some points for everyone here, but I can ask you some questions. So I called Bobby, and I met with her last night. She sat down with me, she took 2 hours. And I specifically asked her about some of the things you had submitted in your memo, because of course, as I said, they were concerning. So one of the things, just to go down the line here. So one of the things that you just said, I think what I first want to address, which is concerning to me, is if you think the response time will go up. You said that if for example, you mentioned this 6 minutes, if there's not someone that responds, right? Can you state that again?
Sure. What the county does is, and they do this universally for all the ambulance services, and primarily we're dealing with ambulance service of Mount Calvary, Campbell Sport, which are part-time ambulance services in the county. North Fond du Lac is a full-time service. They have some staff on 24/7. They have a crew on 24/7. City of Fond du Lac has 3 stations with staff on 24/7. We also have Mount Calvary, Campbell Sport, and Ripon. Those are the ambulance services in the county. Mount Calvary and Campbell Sport assign their staff 12-hour shifts. Like it or not, you're on call from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. With my people, I'm able to put the schedule together based on the availabilities they give me, because everybody works a full-time job. So when an ambulance goes out at Mount Calvary, is paged, they don't care if there's somebody to staff the ambulance. And in this day and age, sometimes there isn't people to staff an ambulance. That's why you've got a long list of mutual aid calls that we are doing, because other people aren't able to go on those calls. So when there isn't somebody available to staff that ambulance, they will wait 6 minutes if they don't get a reply in the radio saying they're going in service. Then they will page on a mutual aid. They'll page out for mutual aid to the closest ambulance service. So you wasted 6 minutes for that, and now you're getting a page from another ambulance service, and now they have to drive the distance where they're coming from, which could be probably another 20 minutes.
So
that would delay that response.
So the way I understand it, so if I'm not sure, what I understood was, the concern is, you said that we may get less calls if we don't have someone available. So what she said is that in 5 minutes, if there is a call for an ambulance, and what she said was 5 minutes.
Okay.
If there is not a response that they hear back from Ripon, that what they would do is that they would then make a call to the next, right, to the next closest one. And if they get a call back stating that Ripon now is on its way, and they had already called someone else, she assured me that then she would call that other place off, and Ripon would still get that call, because now there's that assurance. She said, I can't in good faith just hope and pray that they're going to answer at some point. And so that's why their system, what she said, is in place after 5 minutes, but she would always respect if then Ripon got a hold. And I think there was a concern about needing a certain radio to do that, and she said if that's a concern, you can just call. You can just call using a cell phone, anyone could. I'm here, using a cell phone. I'm not sure that there was a concern about needing special equipment for that. But she said cell phones would work just, here. I was told other agencies carry portable radios, and she assured me that you could just use a cell phone.
Sure.
If you need it. So that wasn't necessarily, the portable radio was not an issue. And she also said, because I asked, you mentioned tonight again, that she was mentioned that there's 2 different tones that she could use. And she made it clear that she never said that she limited to 2 different tones. She said that she would like to work with you to come up with what this system works for you. So for example, with the 2 ambulances, there could be 1 tone for one ambulance, 1 tone for another, and then there could be an all call. That must be page off. So that we don't, she just wanted to assure me and to let it know that it's not that she's limiting that. That was just what a suggestion was, not getting into the weeds, not knowing if Ripon was going to say that we're moving forward with that. And so the concern, then explain to me again what you're saying about needing someone full-time on to cover. Is this someone that we need full-time to answer a phone?
No.
To see if we can do a transfer?
No, a full-time person would benefit our agency, period. I would love to have a full-time person to place in our med car. And if that full-time person was here, they could manage the transfers, they could manage all the things that our communications officers do for us now, if they're not on a call. In addition to that, the plus to that is that if there was a call, they would jump in the med car, they would respond immediately to the call, they'd be an extra set of hands at the call, and they'd be able to start patient care. Much like our police officers now who respond as first responders. In this day and age of COVID, we haven't had a lot of that, but hopefully we'll get back to that too. So having that first responder, having that person, Jolene, I'd love to have that person. It would cost us some money. My problem is I don't think with the way our staff is employed, the 26 of the 28 people who work full-time, that I'm going to be able to find a person 24/7 to come down here and sit and be that response person, in addition to be that person who may be carrying that radio or who may be making that phone call to dispatch to let them know that I'm coming down. I showed her the same thing I just showed you, how we schedule and how our dispatchers page. She said there's no way she could do that. I'm saying we found a way to do it. And I don't blame her. I'm not trying to be critical of Bobby, not at all. Because when you dispatch for 42 different agencies, you have to play by some pretty generic rules. So we've been very fortunate to be able to, for me to be able to schedule my people the way I do it.
So is it that you want to schedule them so that they're not all woken up at certain times?
Well, yeah, that too.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, that would, if there's a page for first crew or second crew, a separate tone, that's gonna, people are gonna sit at home with their pager. What people are gonna do is they're gonna go, I'm on second call tonight, so I'm gonna change it to a different channel, so I'm not bothered by first call. And then at 6 in the morning when I go on first call, are they going to wake up at 6 in the morning, turn it back, and then they're going to miss a page? So that's the problem I have with that. Or did I leave it on open or on the first page channel tonight, and then now I'm woke up at 3 in the morning for a transfer?
Because it's interesting, because I guess I'm told that Mount Calvary, Campbellsport, and North Fond du Lac all get the tones, all calls, and so obviously I don't want people to be woken up in the middle of the night if it's needless, but it is interesting that is what other facilities, other cities
remember,
use.
North Fond du Lac's full-time service, so when there's a call, they get up. And Mount Calvary and Campbellsport schedule their people on 12-hour shifts. And sometimes they fill ambulance crews, and sometimes they don't. They might have somebody who can work 6 to noon, but they can't work 6 to 6. So from 6 to noon, they may be able to staff that ambulance or their second ambulance, but from noon to 6, who knows if they're going to be able to staff that ambulance. The way I put my schedule together is the communications officers know if I have somebody available to be on call at exactly whatever time of day it is and whatever time frame of the week it is.
So we have incredible dispatchers, and I think it's incredible, to your point, that they know this schedule, which is complicated, to your point. Did I hear, I think I just heard you say that it's even hard for our dispatchers to know who is up next. I don't know if you meant to say that.
Yes, I did.
Yikes.
Yes.
If I'm hearing that it's even hard for our dispatchers to know who is up next, and we are advocating to keep a system that it's hard for our, the reason why Bobby said that she could not imagine keeping the system that was presented is because she knows that if anything could be automated and because this is such stressful when an emergency comes in, that she doesn't want someone looking at a piece of paper wondering who to call here and who to call here, that it needs to be immediate. If this ambulance needs to be called here, that's the first tone.
Right.
This ambulance here, or is it an all call? And that time is of the essence. And so she was very clear that she was saying that she wouldn't consider this because she doesn't want to go through the hassle.
Right.
She wanted to say, I'll take the time that is needed until Ripon is happy, but she made it sound like in her professional knowledge, it did not seem like this is the best system when we're talking about timeliness and making sure there's not mistakes and making sure that the proper people are notified in the quickest amount of time. And so what she also suggested was if the concern is that people are being woken up for a call, for a transfer, for example, and they're not taking it, perhaps we could consider giving them a payment of $5 per call or something like that, that they're woken up for and not taken. I mean, that would still save us money, and we're honoring those people. I mean, we could be creative like that. I guess the other thing I'm thinking of is when you talk about the way you handle things, the number of staff you have and the way you handle it, it seems sort of similar to the fire district. And I don't know, perhaps, maybe if Chief Stahl could come up next and explain sort of how that system works, because it does seem like, and I really respect what you've done, Chief Teachout, but it does seem like there could be some way to look at how they do things, to look at how that's being handled, or why yours couldn't be that way, perhaps. Maybe that's another avenue to look at.
And Chief Zoll will get an opportunity to come up and explain his battalion schedules and stuff like that.
I guess what I want to say is this is when we have you saying that this would be a detriment, this is so serious. And yet, when I talked to Bobby Hinken, she made it sound as though she had an answer for every concern that we had. From my understanding, it seems like our services would be enhanced. In the transfers, what she said is what a lot of other places do. The hospitals actually call directly the ambulances.
Nobody's going to be here to answer that phone.
Exactly, wouldn't be here. No, they call. She said that the hospitals actually have the cell phones of the people. If we wanted to, they call the person directly.
Okay.
So she also said that if you wanted to set something up, that their dispatch could, if there's a transfer, then designate it to one. She's not going to look at a schedule of who's available exactly when, but that there is someone that they could obviously look at a system. And again, she said that the hospitals right now in other cities, they call the emergency personnel directly. That's
Okay. But how would they know? My problem is they wouldn't know who to call. I'm on call at midnight tonight. Tomorrow night, there's a different person on call. So do I have to rotate a cell phone to people? It just
so apparently
it just
the
doesn't work.
hospitals do that,
the
and these
nice
are for
thing about-
non-emergency transfers. Let's be clear here, because we're talking about making sure you get revenue from non-emergency transfers, right? So,
Well, and we can say no to those.
Right.
I can say no to every non-emergency transfer. That wouldn't be a problem. That would be a reduction in revenue. And if that's the way council chooses to go, that would be, that's entirely up to you.
But again, why are you saying a reduction? So I'm just imagining someone calls in for a transfer. And then they're getting, maybe the page goes out for the transfer. Why couldn't you take that? Why would it be a reduction?
Because I'm not obligated to take a transfer, an interfacility transfer.
Right.
And I can't take one without knowing that I've got a 911 ambulance available. So the only time, the way it works now is if an out-of-service, an out-agency calls us, a hospital, Aurora, I'll just use Aurora and Oshkosh, for example. They'll call our dispatch center. Our communications officer will look at the schedule. We'll go, hey, we got 3 ambulance crews on. None of them are out. Carte blanche. They've got the green light to send the ambulance on that. If there's an ambulance out on a 911 call and there's 2 other crews available, again, green light, they can send that page out.
So tell me why this is different. What she made it sound as though, so let's say there's a transfer that calls in, the dispatch looks to say there's an ambulance available in Ripon, then they get the call. Why is that different?
Our dispatchers know that I've got 3 ambulances staffed. Their dispatchers don't know if I have 1 ambulance staffed. They just send out a page.
Well, they have to know that there's at least 1 ambulance staff. Don't we as a city have to have at least 1 ambulance staffed at all times?
We try,
We try?
yes. Believe it or not, there was a time this Saturday morning. I didn't have a crew chief for a first ambulance. I didn't have a paramedic scheduled for a first ambulance because I had nobody to volunteer for that ambulance. I don't have a full-time staff. I can't tell people when they have to work.
But again, I don't know, how is that an issue if this is a non-emergency transfer? I guess I'm just trying to understand, I don't know if others understand this. Why is this a sticking point, and why would we have to take 1 less transfers? And 2, it sounds as though, the way Bobby explained it, is that other cities, we're not the only city that is worried about transfers. Other cities have figured this out and are happy with it. And I'm just trying to understand, again, they say that there's a non-emergency transfer. They look to see, there should be an ambulance staff. They call them out, and they take it. Why would we lose? Why are you suggesting that if we go forward with this, that you would have less transfers? I don't understand.
I'm talking about the transfers that we are not obligated to take from out of area.
Sure.
So that would be a loss of revenue for those. Even if Ripon Medical Center called and said, we have a transfer, I do my best to take those transfers for them.
Sure.
They're our hospital.
But why, tell me why it's different.
But if I don't
Do
have a
others understand
staffed
this?
ambulance, if I don't have a second staffed ambulance, I cannot take those transfers based on the transportation or the administrative code that I've got cited in my DHS 11038. I have to always have a staffed 911 ambulance available in the city before I can do any type of transfers. Sometimes I have 1,
Absolutely,
sometimes
but-
I have 2, sometimes I have 3. Our dispatchers know how many I have at any given moment. They know that. So they can take those calls if they want. Fond du Lac County does not know that. They are not interested in knowing what my schedule looks like. They're just going to page an ambulance and hope somebody responds. And if they don't
And again,
respond...
this is not emergency. This is not emergency. So
Right.
they would page, if they got a call for a transfer, yes, they would say, there should be one ambulance available, and then you could decide, or if those people answer, they're on it. I'm still having, I don't know, is anyone else confused here? Does everyone else understand?
Can I just make a quick suggestion, Jolene?
Yeah.
Have you spent some time in the dispatch center and spend 2, 3, 4, maybe a full shift in the dispatch center and see all of the things that the communications center does for us?
It's incredible what they do. That's not
Yeah.
what I'm saying. I'm not questioning that. I guess I'm just trying to say.
But I think that would help you to understand kind of the way things flow. And if I may suggest to council that this is, to me, this is a very vital part of the efficiency of our agency, the EMS department. Jumping to a decision, nobody on the council has talked to me, with the exception of a few questions at 2 different appearances before the council. Maybe it would be a good idea to form an advisory council or a committee, advisory committee with 3 chiefs. I'd love to have a communications officer, a couple of council members, and we could sit down and attempt to educate and explain the process, why it works for us, why it works for other people in the county, and why it's so important, why having our own communication center is so important. Just throwing it out there as an option.
I appreciate those words. And again, I don't want to make it sound like it's not working for you right now. My only question was, I just didn't understand why you think that you would get less transfers, if that's a major concern for you, less non-emergency transfers under the new system. I guess I'm just having a trouble understanding why that would.
Jolene, I'm going
Yeah.
to interrupt you here. We've been going back and forth on the same question for quite some time now. So I'm going to see if anyone else has any other questions for Chief Teachout before we move on to Chief Saul? No other questions for him? All right, thank you,
Just
Jim.
point of clarification, we're not a volunteer department, we're a paid on-call EMS department, correct?
No, we're considered volunteer.
But
I've
we're
got,
paid on call when.
right. Do you know what you know how much we get for every hour that I'm on call? 78 cents.
But just for clarification, they're not just coming and just being there because of it. They are getting compensated for
Right.
their efforts.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
And Jim, we also, and as I mentioned, 8 to 4 weekdays, I do have full-time staff here.
Yep, same as fire department, 36 to 40 members,
Yeah.
full-time employees, all of the places.
Just for parts of the week. So, and that has improved our response times. And I budgeted that knowing that I could work that into my budget without costing the taxpayers any money.
I understand staffing. Trust me, I deal with it every day. I do the scheduling every week.
Yeah.
So I know what it's like to try to schedule a
Right.
6-hour employee, an 8-hour employee, a 4-hour employee. I can understand and the efficiencies. But my point is trying to make that work. And we do it in other departments. So maybe it's just a matter of, again, like you said, looking at your schedule, looking at fire, looking at EMS, looking at police. Everybody has different schedules. You have a different schedule than the police.
Right.
Then it's different than the fire. All three run differently, yet they all work in their departments. So I can hear your passion in making your schedule work for you. The fire department makes their schedule work for them. The police have made their schedule work for them.
Correct.
So I hear your passion there, and I can appreciate that. Sometimes it's a matter of stepping back and going, is this the best way to schedule? All due respect, but is it the best way? Is it the safest? Is it the most efficient? Because there's still inefficiencies with all three. I'm not saying one's right or wrong. I think there's inefficiencies with all of them. You can find a nitpicky way. So I think it's a matter of, if we do change, how can we schedule this better to help your employees and the services for everybody? Same for the fire, same for the police. Because if this schedule comes into play, that could affect any of us.
Right.
So it's a matter of how can we make sure all those schedules come into play, so Fond du Lac County does know if we go that way. If we don't, fine, then we gotta look at the other ways. Gotta look at the other expenses, the other costs, but at the same time, maybe it's a great time too to look at those efficiencies in the future if we do stay here as well. So I guess that wasn't even a question, sorry, John, I don't know if I had one in there.
I get it, Jim.
Scheduling is not
yeah.
easy, and I can
Right.
hear that over and over with you, and I appreciate that, so thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief Teachout. Chief Saul?
How do I follow that? First of all, in the beginning, I have provided facts on how we operate with dispatch from the fire end of things. You all have that previously in your packets. I've had some in-depth discussions with some of you answering your questions you have had over the last month or two about my pros and cons. To clarify information or get further input about issues we've had or might have had. And I thank you guys for that. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have tonight related to or comparing different operations relating to the way fire does things. Change is not easy for anyone, and I know that if we go to Fond du Lac Dispatch, Ripon Area Fire District, we'll have to change and not do some things that I want to do or that we want to do. If we stay, after realizing some things that I've learned, I may also change some things. I will work with whatever decision is made to best serve the ones I have been hired as an expert to protect. Not to make change just because it's not the way we've always done it might not be the right answer. I'm going to close. Well, I'm not going to close yet. As far as, that was way too early for that.
Yeah, I was going to say that's short for you.
As far as the way the fire department pages for our department, first of all, our on-call program is pretty similar to EMS, where they have they have 6 people or 8 people, whatever it is, on 3 different crews, where we have 7 or 8 people on one group. We do have one page for that on-call group, but we have 3 different responses. We have our rapid response vehicle, only calls, where that group still gets woken up, but they only have one person going out on the call. We have an accident where only 2 people go on our heavy rescue squad, but the whole group gets woken up for the call. Everyone else on our pagers, and our pagers are similar, are the same pagers that EMS uses and all the surrounding fire departments. But there's also a tone on here, or a button, that if they're not on call, those 7 people are on call, they have the on-call on. They need to know what's going on. But if they don't, they have a switch on there, they switch it to G on the pager, which is for our general alarm. And they then, that's the whole department. So if there's a structure fire, everyone's gonna know about it. So that's a little bit about how we page our people. I would love to see, if I were to expect the dispatchers to know who on my battalion is covering who, because it happens all the time. Something I would never expect the dispatchers to know who's covering who. That's on my guys to know that. As far as mutual aid, I have 7 battalion members on a battalion. I have a lieutenant who rides the engine. I have 6 firefighters who ride with them. And I have a battalion captain who's on call. They don't get any extra money to be on call. They get a stipend once a year of $250, I believe it is, to be on call. But that captain is in charge, and it just happened the other day. We got paged out to go mutual aid to a grass fire. All we had to do was get on the radio and take a pass, and we did. It's that simple. I'm gonna close by saying a couple of things. That we need to take our personal feelings or wants out of this. None of this should be personal. We should do what's best for the service we provide to our community first and foremost, and that decision is above any of our pay grades back there. That's you guys. I have to respond to something that's been said up here, and that is, Chief Wallner stood before you guys and said this change would not compromise the safety of our community. Chief Teachout stood up here and said he disagrees that it would compromise the safety of our community. And I gotta tell you, I stand up here and I'm with Chief Wallner. Chief Wallner would not stand up here, nor would I stand up here as the fire chief who was hired to protect this community to the best of our ability and stand up here and not do what's right for the community. So I had to say that. And again, the safety of our personnel, the safety of the community is the utmost importance. And money's important, yes, money's important. Whichever way the decision goes, whichever way the decision's made, the Ripon Area Fire District under my leadership will continue to provide the best service we can with the dispatch capabilities we have to work with. That's what we have to do, okay? But I will tell you that Chief Wallner and Chief Saul are standing here, and we're not telling you to do something that's not in the best interest and is going to compromise the safety of this community. If you have any other questions, I'd be more than willing to answer them.
Could you walk us through, so let's say there's what's called an all call or let's say a very serious accident, or a large house fire, whatever, something that's very serious that needs to be coordinated with other emergency personnel. Can you walk through how this works for you, how you get called, how perhaps our local dispatch, our county might get, so let's say, for example, could you kind of walk through?
We could take a house fire, for example, and I'll make it short and sweet. House fire call comes in. Does it go to 911 or does it go to the city of Ripon? I would say better than 90% of those calls do go to Fond du Lac County. Some of those local people know the Ripon number and they call that. Either way, whether it comes from Fond du Lac County or us, it gets transferred to us. Our dispatchers, they do a great job getting us out the door, especially those two sitting right there. They do a great job getting us out the door. And we get to the fire. If it's a working fire, I'll take Joy Street, for example. Joy Street was the one down at a high school. We handle that fire with our automatic aid companies, which is done throughout the entire county. And that fire never went to a MABUS alarm, which is a mutual aid box alarm system we belong to. So that communication stayed right through with the dispatchers in Ripon. Then we'll take Jackson Street, for example. Those calls came in through 911. They also came into the city of Fond du Lac. We arrived on the scene. We knew we had people trapped on the second floor. We had a significant fire going on. It was a 95-degree day with 100% humidity, probably, is what it felt like. We went to a MABUS alarm. Once we go to a MABUS box alarm, theoretically, and the way it's supposed to work is all that radio traffic is being done. We switch our channel over to Fond du Lac County, and we're talking to them from that point forward to the end of the fire. There are issues that, whether the dispatcher says, where do you want the police to block off? We got to talk to Ripon on that. So that's kind of how it ends, how it goes. It's either a fire that's somewhat contained, and we have our capabilities with our 4 departments that come in to help us right away, or we switch over to Fond du Lac County, MABUS Division 120, and we talk to them, and all the radio traffic goes through them.
So you're already working with the county, is what you're saying, in some cases?
In some cases, yeah. I would say if we're talking house fires, probably more than half our house fires.
Just to clarify, if I heard this correctly, we take all the cell phone calls already go to the county.
Any
911?
Yeah.
911 phone calls
Okay,
go to the
and
county.
that's on a cell phone, correct? Now, is it comparable? Can I just say that, is it comparable to say that the call, if it goes to Fond du Lac County, is pretty comparable to what we have already within the city? Meaning reaction and how quickly your engines get out the door? That's all I got.
If a 911 call goes to the county, there's, I don't know, Chief, that's more of a question for you to answer than me. If there's a delay, there's not much of a delay there. I do have some, if you'd like to listen to them, some calls from fires, but obviously not tonight, but.
Well, Chief Wellner's coming up, but we'll say I have had a chance to listen to several 911 calls, and it takes a minimum of 55 seconds for Fond du Lac County to transfer that to Ripon. And that's if the Ripon dispatcher is not currently already busy with another call.
And I'm just trying to clarify so that way the people, because this is all public and everybody can hear this, I want everybody to have as much knowledge as possible. This way, if the public doesn't want to talk to us about it, that they have information at hand that you guys have given us, and now that they can have it too. So I appreciate it, guys. And you, thanks.
So just to clarify, if, right now, the way the system works, if it's a call that needs to come back to Ripon, so let's say it's a 911 call through cell phone, Fond du Lac County gets it, they are then contacting our dispatch center because we have a current dispatch, right? So that's who they have to go to. There's one person that's, and if they're already on the phone call with a non-emergency or another emergency, they have to put that person on hold and they're now answering. Versus, here's what I was gonna say. It blew my mind last night when I was in the communications center in the county. Here's what happened. I was there when a 911 call came in. At that time, there's a light that goes on. Everyone there knows it's a 911 call. Immediately, as the person is entering the information, some information is already pre-populated because of their technology. So the one person was on the phone with them, and there was 2 other dispatchers that were already contacting because they could see on the computer screen as they were typing, were already calling up the police and the fire. Simultaneously, 3 people were on the phone while the dispatch was on the phone with 911. And I know we already have heroes that are here locally in our local communications center, but we don't have 3 people on staff. I mean, and they have 4. There was 5 with their supervisor at all times. And so my understanding is this question of it would take longer to now dispatch Ripon is because we're doing it to ourselves, because they have to contact someone who has to then answer the phone, and they could be on the phone, whereas this could be happening, I saw it firsthand, instantaneously. It sounds like the delay that the concern of is only caused because they need to contact we have incredible people. I'm not saying like incredible people. And in fact, we have such incredible people that we already heard the change in pay that Fond du Lac County has. I will say that Bobby said that she has been in conversation with personnel here, and she is very impressed with them. You know, there is spots that are available. Quite frankly, the more they learn about the Fond du Lac facility, I'm afraid we're going to lose them. Now, she said that she would not hire them, knowing that that we have our system here. She would not do that to us. But it just blew my mind to see how this is happening instantaneously. And then the other thing I did ask Bobby was, you all know I used to come from a school counselor background, so I know that there are people that are dealing with perhaps self-harm, suicide ideation. I need to state now that if that is something someone is dealing with, there's lots of help they can get. But here is the exact, and I said to her, how many calls of self-harm, of someone threatening to harm themselves do you get? And she said, quite a few. I said, specifically how many? And she said, 2 to 3 a day. And under this circumstance, what the dispatch that is available in Fond du Lac to do, because they have certification, and again, not because our dispatch could not do this, but quite frankly, they just don't have the certification, and there's only one person, is that person would stay on the phone that entire time until someone shows up. Let's just take, for example, the way I understand it, and please tell me if I'm right or wrong here. Let's say someone from the city of Ripon calls our dispatch here, and they are threatening to harm themselves. Now another call comes in, and maybe it's a car accident. Maybe it's a fire. How does that work? Does that dispatch here in Ripon need to put that person on hold that is threatening to harm themselves to answer the new call coming in? And perhaps it's even a non-emergency, someone complaining about grass. Is that what our current situation is?
Yes, that's pretty much a summary of it.
This becomes almost emotional for me. I mean, I can't imagine having a loved one in a crisis, and they have to, our current system, they have to be put on hold. Or let's say, our dispatch, they could be helping with bleeding control. They could be helping someone with a defibrillator, CPR. Currently, right now, we can't do that. That gets pushed over to the county because we do not have someone to stay on the phone. So what we're saying is, we could, and I know that our dispatchers are more than capable of doing this. They just, again, they can't because we don't have the capability, that we could have immediately someone staying on the phone with someone to help with CPR instruction, to help with childbirth, bleeding control, helping with self-harm. And we could have this, but we currently right now do not. And irregardless of cost, I just think, wow. If it's my loved one, I want to make sure that there is someone on the phone until help shows up.
I'll come back up and address a couple things. I appreciate what you've said there, Jolene. Obviously, the chiefs have come up. The chiefs are very passionate about their departments. I've taken no offense to anything that's been said up here tonight. Really, what they want is they want the best for their departments. And I think that, this is a very important topic, and there's a lot of consideration here. As far as the dispatchers, you've raised some interesting points there, and I appreciate that. Bobby said she wouldn't hire anybody from here until if that was something we decided. But quite frankly, those employees have stated to me that they wouldn't leave here before that change occurred because, quite frankly, they're loyal to the mission of emergency response with our community, and that's just the type of people they are. So I don't know where we go from here. Chief Teachout has certainly offered you a suggestion. I don't know I leave it up for you for any questions you have for me or some further direction that you would like. Obviously, right now, we've budgeted 2021 as if the communication center is here. So that's taken care of because we didn't know decisions that were going to be made and discussions that were going to be happening.
One question for you on it. The gentleman, Alan, from the county executive, in his letter, the number 9, the Administrative Review Board. I'm not familiar with that. We'd have 3 people on it. What exactly do they do? I mean, we're going to be, by going with them, right now, we're free to do what we want. I mean, it's our dispatch.
Yeah, we control
Everything, yeah.
policy, and generally what happens is, let's say the chiefs have, together we discuss if there's a policy change that needs to be made or something that's happened that we need to address. We discuss that together, and then we implement that change with our communications officers.
And we would lose that going to Fond du Lac to a certain extent.
Basically, it's a group, it's a board made up of the entities that are involved with the communications.
So we'd be 3 of how many people on this board?
I don't know how many total, John, do you know?
9, right?
9 that are on it, so it's representatives from each.
Okay, so there's 9 right now on it?
I think so,
So there'd be 12
yeah.
on it, so you'd have 1/4 of the whole,
Yeah,
so to speak.
And in our discussions, if I remember correctly, typically they only allow 2 per community.
Yeah,
However, we're a little different because the fire department is separate from the city. It's a separate entity, really.
Yeah.
It's a fire district. So they would allow for that 3rd voice from them.
okay.
If that was the conversation, if I recall.
Correct.
That's why they had.
Okay, so the fire department's kind of a wild card, being a Ripon area.
Well, they're separate
Okay.
from the city function. So the police and EMS are both city owned. and
Okay,
operated.
but the city would always have 2.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any concerns with that, if we'd have to go this way?
With the board?
Having to go to a board instead of just the 3 of you having control.
Well, obviously, that was one of the factors as to why we retained our dispatch center back when that all happened, was because of that loss of home rule, that loss of control, that existed at that time. The relationships were different.
Okay.
People involved were different. If you remember, there wasn't a standalone communication center with, they were combining with the sheriff's department, who was the major controller there. That's since moved. So, yeah, you're losing that. I'll be honest, I'm losing my control,
Right.
my say. Even, and not that I would ever do this, but obviously one of those chiefs could come to me and say, I want this to be done. And I could say, well, because of these reasons, that control we lose.
Okay.
Do you have concerns about that board?
Just the fact that, two items, and I brought this up at the previous meeting. First off, if something comes up, I can walk into Bill's office, consult with the fire chief if it involves his department. We can solve that in an hour.
Right.
He can put up, and we could walk up to the dispatch center and consult with their communications officers and say, hey, this is a problem, give me your thoughts. And boom, it's taken care of. And Bill will issue a policy change or procedural change, and there won't be a problem. So that's one, is timeliness of something.
Okay.
And secondary, yeah, we would lose, the bargaining power that we have. It's and kudos to Bill. And sure Chief Saul will agree with me. We walk into his office and say, Bill, I'd like this to happen. Or, Bill, this was a problem, how can we fix this? He makes sure it gets fixed. And when I go to the board, they're gonna tell me, I'm not gonna say what they're gonna say, but, well, that's a Ripon problem. But it's not a Fond du Lac problem, it's not a North Fond du Lac problem, it's not a Waupun problem. So, we're not gonna do anything about it. That's my concern.
Okay.
So, but if they see it as a universal problem, sure, I would hope that everybody would look at it. But the problems that we have are community problems. I doubt that a Ripon community problem would affect, you know, what would Fond du Lac, why would Fond du Lac care if we needed to send a different truck to a fire or something like that. So, and the other thing too is Bobby she can do a lot without doing that board. So I don't want to make you think that everything that Bobby's controlled by that board. She can take care of the easy stuff, but if it's a major change, then that board is going to review it. And it should. It's the right thing to do.
All right.
I think I gotta say something too, and that's, if it's, and John's kind of right in one way by saying, you know, if it's a Ripon related problem, that's probably gonna be more of a lobby thing to say, how do we work this out? If it's a problem we bring to the board, it might not address the whole concern for everybody else. They might not be concerned about it, but maybe it's something that affects everyone else. So, yeah, there's pros and cons to both. And the bottom, yeah, and I don't mean to cut you off, but the bottom line is that was one of the reasons we retained our dispatch center was to have that control. Because of, and again, things have changed drastically since that time, and she's expressed that she's always willing to listen and work through problems, so.
We didn't have the same offer on the table though, Bill.
I'm sorry, what?
All due respect, we didn't have the same offer on the table.
No, we did not.
Years ago that we do now.
Nope,
Budgetarily, operationally,
correct.
everything. It is a completely different
Yes,
offer.
so much has changed since that time, that technology, issues, money, whatever.
Thanks, Bill.
John?
All right, thank you.
I'm trying to pull these numbers from all these different pages, and so I'm going to need some help from everybody. If we go to the Fond du Lac County Dispatch, that costs the city of Ripon $200,000 a year. EMS, the 24/7, 365, is $175,200 a year. Extra officer that the chief wants or needs would be $100,000 a year, so that's at $475,000, $200,000. And I don't have a number for if you're going to retain a front desk or assistant in the police department, what that cost would be per year. But the way I add it up, it's well over what the 10-year projection is to keep the personnel costs for the dispatch center in Ripon. So am I looking at those numbers right and pulling them together?
Well, let me just, and I'm not sure where you're looking specifically.
Okay.
Let's just kind of walk through this, just so that, you know, we don't. So when you look at the first thing I would ask you to look at when you're talking about just the money is this box. This box graph here. So personnel costs alone, that articulates to you a projection based on a 3% increase, which is marginal compared to what it generally has been. That's what you're looking at over the next 10 years versus what the tax levy from Fond du Lac will be. That's personnel cost alone, okay? When you add in those other things, you're looking at, again, over the next 10 years, probably another $1.8 million on stuff that we use every year. So licensing agreements, telephone lines, those type of things can be $18,000 to $20,000 a year. So let's say over the next 10 years, let's say 180,000, but you know, that pushes that number up even further. That doesn't count in any type of infrastructure issues that you're going to have to replace. So it doesn't count in the $140,000 for a 911 system. It doesn't, you know, add those things in. Personnel costs are always the highest thing, okay, whenever we're talking about this. Certainly, you know, where we're going with personnel costs, and that's no fault of the employees, that's no fault of anybody's, if they just are what they are. 90% of my budget, over 90% of my budget is personnel costs. So that plays a significant role in that number. But yeah, if you And again, the officer position that you suggest and that we talked about, that would be just from my standpoint, that would be a budgetary item that would be requested in 2022. If I believe that need is still needed at that time. And you could always say, we're not doing that as a council. You could eliminate that out of the budget.
Is that need regardless if we switch over or if we stay?
Well, the reason that I'd be looking for that additional officer would be to, again, if our dispatchers are not here during those evening hours, anytime somebody comes in the lobby wanting to talk to an officer, I've got to pull somebody off the road to do that. So I may have officers that are going to be subjected to being in the dispatch center handling those things that communications officers had been doing in the past. So I need to be careful about making sure I've got coverage for the community as well as answering those things that the dispatchers are doing here now, currently. So that's a significant issue.
Okay, so, yeah.
So yeah, if the communications center stayed, I don't think that there would be a need for us to
Okay.
request that.
Good.
And I agree with the cost that Chief Teachout is indicating to you that he would need, whether you agree with those or not, that causes you to really look at the numbers here as to where we're at. And there's not a lot of leeway in regards to that. But again, those are, in my opinion, those are budgetary items. Those are issues that certainly, and again, I'm not being disparaging of EMS or his needs. He's articulated those to you, but as I stated in the document, those are budgetary requests that we all have to make. If I believe I need a new officer or an additional officer, I would make that as a budgetary request. You could deny that. Same thing with him. He would make that as a budgetary request. So, but if all things considered, if he got all of his requests that he wants, I got my requests, the fire chief got whatever he wanted, yeah, you're looking at where the savings comes from are those, if there is savings, is that, remember, the county will cover all of the hardware expenditures in the future. All of those issues, they take the liability issues away. They take all those employment issues away. That's part of that $200,000 that you're going to be paying. So, but I agree. You start to look at it and you really got a question here.
You made a comment, and I might have misunderstood it. You said that 200,000 stays on the table as long as that Al Bico, the executive, is.
Yeah, I mean,
So we don't have
I
that.
don't know what the future would hold. Obviously, the agreement is the agreement, and our argument would be, that's the agreement. That's what you said. This is what we signed. That's what it is. Obviously, if, 10 years from now, a different county exec came in, he might say, oh, maybe we want, he could make that argument, or she could make
Proposing
that
is a
argument.
10-year contract.
Is that what it is?
That's what I read it to be. Now, I don't know.
I don't believe so.
Was it reduced
No,
to that?
no, there's no time limit on it.
Okay.
I will tell you that the amount that the city of Fond du Lac paid when they went to combined dispatch is the same amount they're paying today. That's never changed. And in my discussion, or in our discussions with him, we don't believe that there's any intention of that ever changing. This is not an easy conversation. I understand that, but
And I will add, because it's not easy, I can't stress enough how much I learned. And I don't want to talk so much here, but I do think it's interesting that Bobby Hinkins said I was the only council member that came and visited and sat down with her. And I say this because the question of, for example, the leadership board that she was talking about, if it comes down to Ripon having control, what they said is they are making an exception, as we just heard, for us to have 3. Every other city in the county, their EMS and fire are together, which is why they only have 2. So if we're worried about having sort of more say, if anything, Ripon, they are ceding more sort of say to us because they're allowing us to have 3 people at that table from the city of Ripon. And she also said that, here's a neat thing, because you're now combined, we're afraid that we're not going to be able to solve something immediately, but on the same token, we don't have to wait. They have quarterly meetings formally, but you can call any time to her. She said, call any time if there's an issue you have. You're not going to wait until the meeting, the quarterly meeting. And she said, here's a neat thing. We have other people at the table that probably have also dealt with this issue. So the concern now is we're losing out on that other brain power expertise from other cities, that they could be collaborating with us to come up with an idea. And so that's what she assured me. I also had the question about, the cost. And speaking of Al Beagle, let's hope he doesn't retire soon. And here's the important thing is that he's not charging the city of Ripon for CAD licensing, for software, for mobile computer licensing, for the squad cars. These are things that Bobby said other counties, she knows for a fact, are charging the municipalities for. Alan has said the city of Ripon folks are taxpayers for the county. I want to make sure that we're not making money off of this. So, he could retire. He could change jobs next year. And it was pretty clear that we're sort of lucky that we're only being charged at $200,000, where they could request more based on the levy and what the needs are and what, quite frankly, seems to be common at other places. I will also state that Bobby said that for 6 months, a dispatcher is never on the call alone when they're training because of the seriousness of the situation for emergencies. So for 6 months, there's always someone else listening in, providing support. There's no way we can have that. We don't have that. And she also has weekly meetings with her staff. She said also there's post-traumatic stress debriefing. They have EAP. When someone's having a hard day, maybe they just were on the dispatch with someone that unfortunately passed away. She can say to them, take a breather. We have 3, 4 other people here right now. We can't do that. If I'm looking out for the best needs of our dispatchers, quite frankly, the way she's able to, she put humor up there. She's checking in with them personally. She's providing professional development. If I'm looking out for the best of our dispatchers, wow. We don't have someone that right now, obviously each of you are looking at the department heads, the well-being of the dispatchers, but at the county, we have someone who is literally in charge with making sure the health, well-being, the mental health of their dispatchers are taken care of. Wow.
I'd like to hope that I do that.
Yes,
as
and I
far
think
as
you do, but
pay attention to their needs.
No, you do, but what I'm saying is you're not
Yeah,
paid.
but I understand what you're saying.
That's not your professional
Right.
sort of main role.
I get it. Yep, I get it. There certainly are things that they offer that we cannot offer. There is no argument there. The staffing, the budget they have, the facility, the equipment, there are certain things that they can do. Not to take away from any of our, you're not doing that.
And I know you take care of them, and they talk so highly of you.
I would just like to add to that note, no matter how exceptional our dispatchers are, and they are exceptional, I don't think they can provide the level of service that having 3 or 4 or 5 dispatchers in one room can do by themselves. They are exceptional, but they don't have the backup that Fond du Lac does. And in my opinion, the city would benefit vastly by going to the Fond du Lac Dispatch Center. And hopefully, our dispatchers can make their system better and go and work there for those that are willing to make the commute. But the way I see it, it's the best for our community. Just take the money out of it. Safety. That's simple. But that's my 2 cents.
I gotta say, thanks, one more thing, I gave up my hour at the podium. Only 10 minutes into it, so, as I'm getting dirty looks. As Chief Teachout said, he needs this. When Chief Wallner was up here, he said, well, he wants this, I want that, I want this. I gotta be honest with you. Our fire department is very comparable to Waupun, Edgerton, and Baraboo. And all those departments they're very similar to ours, where they operate fire and not EMS. Those departments have 2 to 3 full-time employees. Let me tell you, I want full-time employees, okay? I want 2 more full-time employees. But we operate similar to EMS, and I will tell you that on the fire end of it, it's not coming down to the want. I want those employees. That's a budgetary item, and I don't need those employees just because we're just on the fire end, just because we're switching dispatch centers or potentially switching dispatch centers, like you said. I just want you to know that we're doing that with 1 employee, and we don't need those other employees to answer those calls to make the system work. I'm done talking, seriously.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this topic for the evening? Any instructions to departments for further information? Hold it over for another meeting then, continue the discussion. Although I will ask Bill one question. As far as timeline goes, in order to implement what your suggested timeline, how quickly do we need to have a firm decision to implement that?
Yeah, I think we need to, for a number of reasons. One is, the transition with the county, they're working on whether they need to, as part of their hardware budget with their transition, as far as our capabilities here, to incorporate that, what that's going to look like, or if we're not going to be here anymore. So they've got some things there that they need to answer in a relatively short time. And quite frankly, I think our communications officers deserve an answer here on where we're going to go. We've been struggling with this for a number of months, and obviously it's an important conversation, but I think they deserve that, and regardless of how this goes. So I would say that if we could, maybe give you an opportunity to reach out, answer some more questions with either any of the chiefs directly, but I would think that next meeting we need to decide where we're going here.
First meeting in December?
Is there a meeting? There's a 23rd, right?
There's one more this month. So.
This month. Again, it's up to the council. I'm just thinking to give the council an opportunity to really digest what we've heard, and obviously, it's a huge decision.
And if we are to make the change, what do you need from us as far as backing or motions or just direction to do it?
I would think that we need to finalize that agreement with the county.
Correct, yes.
That route, that would be the only thing, and then we've kind of outlined some suggestions there within the documents that would dictate how we would transfer funds and as far as holding them over and those type of things, but we would take care of that internally. I would think the only thing that we would need would be to approve, probably some type of approval of the agreement with the county, a formal approval process, but that would come after your decision on how you go.
Any more discussion for this evening? And do we have a hard copy of the agreement from the county?
No, not yet. They're waiting for direction.
So they haven't drawn up an agreement yet.
Well, the agreement, pretty much the agreement is outlined in the document that Al Beagle sent. I would imagine there wouldn't be much more different than that, but that kind of outlines what that agreement would be.
Other than locking into a timeline, I think the Common Council would be interested to know if they'd be willing to enter into a memorandum of understanding as to how long the $200,000 would apply. Certainly an important factor in the decision. So maybe you can reach out to him and see.
I can do that, yep.
Bill in his memo used the 10-year window. So maybe 10 years is not a bad place to start.
Why not perpetuity?
I would not put the 10 years in there, quite frankly.
20? Yeah.
I would not even put a number in there. I would just.
30?
Leave it open-ended.
Never going to get that.
Leaving it open-ended, I think, is a risk when you don't have albeco for that much longer.
Right.
I just think that's a risk. So I'm just throwing the 10-year out there as kind of a window that I think he may be able to sell with the county, but I don't know that. I don't think anybody's going to look at it.
They made representation, because I asked that specific question at the last meeting, and they made representation that it was going to be in perpetuity.
Okay, and that's fine.
That's what I
That's the way I
understood.
took it.
That's
If
the way I
that,
took
if
it.
that can be,
That's the
then
way I
make
took
The way
that
I understood
request.
it. Sorry if
That
I'm
would
wrong.
be a
Bill.
wonderful lock-in. Have a memorandum of understanding
And I
that
think that in Lori and I's
One
meeting with
time
them, that was our understanding.
levy for
Correct.
the purpose of allowing the city to participate in the 911 program.
And there's
privy to that.
cancellation clauses on each side. I mean, it's all in there.
All right, so we'll hold this discussion over for the next meeting. And hopefully, if you have any questions for the chiefs, please reach out to them and they will give you your answers. Moving on to project updates and staff reports. Lori?
I have nothing.
Mike, you have it? Chief? Other chiefs? No, all right. No staff reports.
Just a big thanks to Mike's crew for the leaves. I know it's been a big 2 weeks here, obviously all month, but the past 2 weeks with the weather we had, they've been out there I've seen them constantly out there, so thank you.
Doing a wonderful job.
And you are scheduling till the 20th of this month?
That is correct.
Okay. Just so everybody out there listening knows to get their rakes out and get at it.
You coming over, Albert?
Sure, why not?
So you got one more good weekend of raking,
Yep.
weather depending. All right, so I have no appointments tonight, just a couple of comments. First, on the elections, I personally wanted to thank our city clerk, Ann Schomer, and all the poll workers for their hard work during the entire election season. It's no longer an election day. Second, as a reminder to the community, the Ripon City's sign ordinance requires that all political signs must be removed 3 days following the election. As it is now a week past the election, all those political signs should now be taken down. On COVID updates, new cases are skyrocketing in the state, in the county, the country, the world. As weather cools down, people stay indoors more and causes a higher chance of getting infected, and infections are increasing almost exponentially. Ripon's new cases have been holding fairly steady at a high point, but they're steady. Unfortunately, our infection rate is very high. Most days are between 20 and 60%. This means that people are likely only getting tested once they display symptoms. That leaves the people who are asymptomatic to possibly spread the disease. If you are exposed or if you have had contact with someone who tests positive, get yourself tested. There are free testing sites in Oshkosh and Fond du Lac. The Oshkosh site is still open 6 days a week. I believe the Fond du Lac one may be down to 1 day. In the meantime, everyone should continue to stay home unless you have essential business or shopping to conduct. And when you are out, wear face coverings and continue to social distance. On a positive note, a vaccine that shows an effective level of more than 90% with little to no side effects is pending FDA approval currently. If approval is granted, distribution of the vaccine could begin before the end of this year. First responders and healthcare workers would receive vaccines first, and general distribution to the rest of the country would be most likely in early to mid-spring of next year. So there may be an end on the horizon. As always, be safe, stay healthy, and remember to be kind, considerate, and respectful to others. Any comments or future agenda items from council members? Hearing, John?
Yeah, I've gotten a couple complaints about the 100, 200, and 300 block of Watson Street and what can be placed on the sidewalks. And I'd like an explanation, official explanation of what can be placed on the sidewalks. Flags, A-frame, or open signs, or whatever it is. I've read the ordinance and to me, it's a little bit
It's
confusing.
vague.
Pardon?
It's vague.
Yeah. So if Lud
We can
could
look into
please
that. We can
look at that.
Clarification for the
Yeah.
next meeting?
Yep.
All right.
We're going to bring it up at our historic preservation meeting, so I would like to eventually have something official from Lud. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Ben, seconded by David. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.